Sure. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 222nd meeting of the Audit Committee, Tuesday, April 30th, 2024. Roll call by the chair.
All right, the record will reflect that everybody is present.
Can I get an approval of committee meeting minutes, April 2nd, 2024?
So moved. Second.
There are no comments by the chair. Internal audit presentation of report. To you, Ty. Good morning.
Yep, that'd be me. Good morning, everybody. If you grab this presentation, we'll use that to go over the report. So this was, move to slide 2. This was a review of miscellaneous business expenditures, and those we kind of categorize them in two different buckets: reimbursement of employee business expenses, and then expenditures through the use of district credit cards. The last time we did this audit was in 2019. The district law no longer has a petty cash funds. When we did the previous audit, we had to audit petty cash as well, so we no longer need to do that. It's because they closed those accounts. Slide 3. The district does have 5 types of credit cards that they use for miscellaneous expenditures. A lot of the expenditures do involve travel. Should mention. But generally speaking, all the credit cards are monitored by finance. AP reviews the documentation for processes the payments for the monthly payments on the credit cards. We have American Express cards. There are 7 accounts. Now each department and director basically has a card. Other than director of finance, they use the Commerce card. Samaritan does not have an Amex card. So Commerce, there's one account, and again, that is controlled and monitored by finance, but that account was used by several departments during the scope period. That's the way it was handled. That has been discontinued, and I'll talk about that later. Home Depot has one overall account with 3 sub-accounts. That's mainly used by operations. It's not used very much, but it's used by 3 or 4 locations. Sam's Club, one account with several members, that is again controlled by finance, and is used by several departments. It's used a lot for meeting refreshments and food like that, even for the rate commission, that kind of thing. ExxonMobil has one overall account with 2 sub-accounts that is used strictly by operations personnel at Missouri River and Coldwater. It is used to fuel the vehicles out there. Now, our other sites we have actual fuel stations on site that we fuel our vehicles with. These 2 sites do not have those fuel stations. So in order to fuel the vehicles, they use these gas cards, just so you know. Slide 4, employee business expense reimbursements. The district utilizes a form that is a standard form that is completed by the employee. It is approved by the supervisor and department director and then processed by AP. Reimbursement amounts are deposited electronically into the employee's bank account or file, much like direct deposit for the payroll. Same idea. The district does have a policy called business expense reporting that governs this area. If you move to slide 5, you'll see the form I'm referring to. It is a PDF. It does have formulas in it, so when the employee can go in, in the computer and enter their information, and the totals will carry over and carry down to the bottom. At the bottom, you can see the signature lines that I mentioned. The plan is eventually to implement an expense reporting module in our new Fusion system that we just implemented recently, but we're not there yet. So right now, we're still using this manual form. Move to slide 6. This is you can see the overarching policy. The policy is well written. It does a good job of addressing the various areas. You can see it does date back to 2018, so it does need some updates. We'll be recommending it in our recommendation section. Slide 7. You can see that the totals for the scope period, which is FY23. I'll mention that again in the next page. So overall travel for 23 was 132,000. In FY22, you can see it was only 70. That is related to the COVID. They're relaxing the COVID-related restrictions. So in 21, we actually had no travel. I think we actually had a negative dollar amount on our GL for that. But as the restrictions have been relaxed, the travel has picked up and it's probably gotten back to more of what I would call normal. If you look down the page, you can see we're 33,800 in mileage reimbursements. The comments at Amex, they total about $270,000 of expenses. Now, a good portion of that overall travel is paid for through those credit cards. A lot of that stuff's prepaid before the employee goes out. The hotel, the conference, the airfare, if there is airfare, they prepay it with those credit cards. Home Depot, you can see there's not much use there. It's $4,000. Sam's Club, about $1,700. And ExxonMobil, about $8,000. That's about $700 a month for those sites to fuel those vehicles. Any questions? All right, slide 8. I just want to give you an idea what the travel costs are related to. It's mainly for conference and training. You can see these organizations are some of the organizations that we saw where our employees attended conferences and training. The 5 Cities Plus, that's an organization that the district has belonged to, I think, since the 80s. Basically, it's comprised of wastewater utilities in the Midwest, Cincinnati, Columbus, Indianapolis, Louisville, St. Louis, obviously, and then I think Northern Kentucky. That's the plus part in the 5 Cities Plus. So they meet every year, and they discuss, wastewater operations, new regulations, technology, best practices, and so forth. So several of our employees attend that. Project Management Institute, that's an IT-related organization. Their focus is on best practices for implementation of systems and so forth. Then you go on down the left-hand corner, you got a Water Environment, the Federation Environmental Water Resources Institute. Those are both related to water quality, and engineering operations personnel generally attend the things they put on. Down the right-hand side, you got GFOA, that's Government Finance Office Association. That's for the bean counters. That's like me. So they focus on government and financial reporting. People in accounting, treasury, and myself, we normally participate in some of their training. So, any questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
approximately employees would travel over.
How many?
I'm just
Uh,
general sense. 5 is it?
I would, well, if for treasury, just 1 or 2, and then for accounting, I would say 2 or 3, 3, 4. More than that. All right. Right.
I was just wondering, the 132,000, what's that?
Right.
over?
We can get back to you with something on that. Okay. Any other questions? Slide 9 is to your overall scope. Again, this gave me, we made a review of transactions across departments for FY23. That's a 12-month scope period. So again, we did focus on those 2 buckets that I already mentioned. Slide 10 is for the objectives. We want to make sure the controls are adequately designed and implemented, basically to ensure that the transactions are reasonable in nature and amount. There's no improprieties. We're not spending money on things we shouldn't. We're not buying concert tickets. We're not having extravagant meals and so forth. Process in a manner that's in accordance with district policy. We do have some recommendations around that area. Want to make sure everything's supported by adequate documentation and proper review and approved. Want to make sure adequate separation of duties is maintained throughout the process. Want to make sure the process efficiencies are maximized. We want to avoid late charges, finance charges in this area. Want to make sure district assets are properly safeguarded. Any questions? Slide 11. Approach and methodology. How do we go about this? As we always do, we met with the process owners and did some walkthroughs and planning meetings and really talked through the process, again, understanding how the overall processing was performed. We did obtain policies and procedural documentation. We the populations for those two buckets that I mentioned for their entire fiscal year. We did obtain and review all the credit card statements for all those out of the file room and looked at all of them. With the supporting documentation reviewed for finance and late charges. Slide 12. Now, from the population, we did make some selections for testing. And for the Commerce card, we looked at basically every transaction. Since that card was shared through the departments, we felt that was kind of our riskiest area, so we looked at every transaction from for the Commerce card. We did obtain and review the business expense reports, the credit card summary forms, all the looked at supporting purchase orders. We looked at receipts and invoices supporting these transactions. So when we did the testing, we looked for adequate supporting documentation for all the costs, make sure everything was reviewed and properly approved. Again, everything reasonableness in nation amount cost, nothing improper. And looked for compliance with district policies and procedures. That's best practices. So you go to slide 13. So overall, we had a satisfactory opinion. We did identify 3 opportunities for improvement. Now, the first one was around the overall area of employee business expense reimbursements. Second one had to do with Missouri sales taxes, and the third one is credit card finance and late charges. So overall, this went really well. We didn't see any unusual activity. There's a few things we'd like to see tweaked, but beyond that, I think the area is in pretty good shape. I'll move on to 14 and go over the first recommendation. Employee business expense reimbursements. Now, when we looked at that area, we did test 25 individual transactions. As I mentioned, that the expense reporting policy has not been updated since 18, so that's one recommendation we're going to make is to update that. Now, regarding airline travel, we noted 3 instances of what they call early boarding. That's where I think that's a new revenue stream for the airlines. I think specifically Southwest, where they charge you extra and they put you in A group and so forth. So that's just something we should be paying for. So we need to address that in our policy, I think. Lyft rides, employee tipped over 20% on each of 4 separate trips. Not big dollars here, but generally speaking, we tip 20% at restaurants. Lodging exceeding federal lodging per diem rate. Now, what we ask employees to do there is if they're going to be over the rate, they need to justify why. If the conference hotel is a good reason. So what we know is for 3 of the 25, they did not provide that justification on the form. So, and then the last item is one instance where prepaid lodging and prepaid concert fees were not backed out on the form. So we basically ended up overpaying the employee by $670. Now, the overpayment was identified within like 3 weeks and repaid by the employee. So the employee and the staff identified it, but we obviously wanted to avoid those kind of errors. Slide 15, this again shows you the form again. So to kind of explain what I was talking about. Now the lodging would have showed up in that column. The miscellaneous conference fees would have been in the column. Now those fees were prepaid, but they should have been backed out down in that red section. And in that particular case, they were not. Regarding the justification of the exceeding the federal per diem, that should have been documented in that box over on the left-hand side. All right, any questions? So we're recommending, let's update on slide 16, let's update the policy. Let's address the use of Uber and Lyft and include the related tipping process as part of that. Air travel, we'll specifically address that preferential boarding, so everybody's clear on it. And then items 2 through 5, let's provide some guidance and training around the business expense reporting and using the form. So one thing they can do is add that policy. Every year, everybody has to go through some training where they acknowledge they've read the policies and so forth. We need to add that policy to that list of policies. That one's not on there right now. Slide 17, just regarding that airline thing. You can see the policy in spirit already kind of addresses it. It says company expects air travel will be purchased at the lowest available fare, but it doesn't come out. This whole early boarding is a new thing. So I think we just need to add some language around that so everybody's crystal clear on it. Any questions there? So slide 18, Missouri sales taxes. Since the district is a political subdivision of the state, we are exempt from Missouri use and sales tax. We do have a exemption certificate issued by the state on file. Excuse me. So when we went through the testing, we did identify 30 credit card transactions in which we had sales tax, but they're not big dollars, but obviously it's something we want to avoid. So most of the transactions are handled by admin personnel. So we're just recommending management communicate with that personnel to make sure they're consistent in applying that tax exemption certificate when they're making some of these miscellaneous purchases. All right, last one on slide 19, credit card finance and late charges. When we did the testing, we looked at all the statements. We identified $610 in late fees and finance charges. Again, not big dollars, but something we obviously like to try to avoid. As I mentioned earlier, the use of the Commons card is going to be restricted to only finance personnel from now on. And so a lot of the activity is going to move over to the Amex card. Move slide 20. But we're recommending, hey, since a lot of the activity is going to move to Amex, let's to avoid any finance or late charges. Let's have management communicate with the administrative personnel, just to emphasize the importance of timely completion of the POs and the related documentation. Kind of head off at the past. ExxonMobil, that's more related to operations. We recommend that management will work with operations personnel to effect some improvements around the PO process at those two locations to speed up that process. As far as overall, management is in agreement with these recommendations, and they should have everything implemented by, I would say, July of this year. So does anybody have any questions? I appreciate the time.
Okay, thank you, Todd. The next meeting, tentative date, June 4th, 2024. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Thank you. We're adjourned.
Evans, we're ready when you are.
All right, we will call to order the second meeting of the. Please.
All right, the roll will reflect that all trustees are present.
Motion. The minutes.
So move.
Second.
So first item is the Raftellus Professional Services.
Good morning, trustees. Actually, the next 4 items are mine, so I will continue with those as well. So the first item that I have to cover relates to a request to exercise the second of 4 option years with Raftellus Financial Consultants. Raftellus provides rate modeling support for us when we prepare our rate commission models and financial forecasts. They also provide debt feasibility studies whenever we have to issue bonds. That's a required study. So that work is done in conjunction with the Treasury Department. Again, this request relates to exercising the second of 4 option years with Raftellus Are there any questions that I can answer? Okay, thank you. Okay, I will just move on to the next item, which is our budget ordinance. So as is customary, we typically, from the time we prepare our preliminary budget, we have changes that we make relating to the final budget that'll be introduced in May. So I have a short presentation here which kind of outlines some of those changes. So Stephanie, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So what this slide is showing is that we have reduced the amount that was in our preliminary budget by approximately $6.4 million. And you'll see with respect to revenues, our use of fund balance has dropped by $6.4 million. We've made various changes to our operating expense budget, our capital program, and our debt service budget as well, which equals that 6.4 million. So it's a reduction of 6.4. Most of that is driven by some projects that we've either delayed into FY26 or we've revised the estimates down, which results in a total of the $6.4 million that you're seeing there.
What's the projected fund balance at FY25?
So a couple of things here. So for our, let me get you the exact number. I thought somebody would ask me that. So our projected fund balance in our sanitary replacement fund, which is where we pay most of our construction-related costs, in FY25, we're projecting we'll have about $37 million left in that fund at the end of the fiscal year. And with respect to some of our other funds that we have, our general fund, for instance, we are projecting that at the end of fiscal year 2025, we'll have approximately $61 million in that fund. So roughly about $100 million between those two funds. There are other funds that we have to fund as well, like our debt service funds to pay principal and interest on bonds, but that does not have any bearing on the capital projects.
So I guess the question I'm asking is, if we did like an asset test, how much was our fund balance when we started 2024? What is it now? What is it projected?
So in our construction fund, at the end of FY24, we were projecting to have roughly $336 million in fund balance. Most of that, however, relates to, as Tim, I think, mentioned last month, the way our fund balance works is when we have available bond proceeds, and that could be, for instance, the WIFIA is a good example. It's a federal program that we utilize to borrow monies to pay for construction projects. We also use the state revolving fund quite a bit. So whenever those funds become available, they are placed in our fund balance. And when we spend those funds, which of course we anticipate doing when those projects are being constructed, that balance drops. So whenever we need additional funding, Tim will normally come to the board and we'll request authorization to either do some kind of revenue bond issuance, or we will utilize any federal programs that are available, like the SRF fund. In addition to that, in the budget, you'll see transfers from our wastewater revenues. Part of that goes into the construction fund, and I kind of reviewed that during the presentation last month. So we constantly monitor that fund balance amount just to make sure that there's enough in there to cover our capital expenditures, and also have a reserve balance that's available in case we encounter, overages on projects, or for that matter, what we typically see though is the projects come in under budget for the most part.
So I guess my question is, what is the recommended fund balance across all the funds? I mean,
In terms of dollar value, so that's going to vary. What we typically shoot for is in our wastewater funds, we try to have a 240-day reserve. And most of that, the reason that reserve is kind of high in terms of days is most of our revenues for stormwater come from our tax receipts, and we don't get those until like December, January of every year. On the wastewater side, we try to target a reserve, which I think is 180 days, I believe. I may be wrong on that number, but it's somewhere around about a 6-month reserve. And that dollar value changes each year depending on the amount of construction work we're going to do. And so if for the wastewater side, the reason we have that number of days is we try to target that to, if we needed to do a bond issue, typically we can get that done within that time frame.
For also, just in addition to those specific kind of policies, overall, district-wide, we try to keep an unrestricted cash and investment balance of 550 days. That's one of the commitments we've made to our investors and to the rating agencies to maintain our credit ratings as well. So that's something that we build in when we're doing the rate proposal as well. But that's across, that would include some of the amounts that Marion mentioned. That's across all funds.
Okay, any more questions about fund balance? All right, Stephanie, if you'll move to the next slide, please. So this slide here basically shows you the changes that I outlined before that comprises that $6.4 million on the revenue side. Again, you see the deduction there from fund balance. On the expense side, you also see the deductions from our capital program primarily, which again total a change from the preliminary budget of a decrease of $6.4 million. Next slide, please. I'm just going to quickly cover some adjustments that we made to our capital program. Stephanie, if you'll go to the next slide. Okay, so when we presented the preliminary budget, we had 134 projects that were that we would need appropriations for in FY25. Again, whenever we have projects that need appropriations, we bring those to the board to get approval. So you will always see those. We revised that number upwards to 138 projects, so an increase of 4 projects. However, the amount of the budget that we would need dropped by $6.4 million. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of our budget schedule, here's kind of where we are. We will present or introduce our budget during the meeting next Thursday. We have a public hearing that's scheduled at 6 o'clock after the board meeting for us to present our taxes, our proposed budget, and our tax rates, proposed budget, and our rate adjustments as well. And we hope to have the board to adopt the budget at its meeting in June. So any questions about the time frame going forward? Okay, that's all I have for that particular item. So the next item that's on the agenda is our proposed budget ordinance. And as you would imagine, this particular activity is required by our plan or our charter, as we refer to it. And it authorizes the district to spend funds during FY25 for both wastewater and stormwater operations of the district. The budget also includes our strategic business operating plan, which covers a 5-year period. That's also a requirement of the charter. The appropriations for the budget total $555.2 million. And on the detail sheet that's in front of you there, you'll see the various funds that we are requesting appropriations to. As I just mentioned a moment ago, you will not see appropriations listed there for our capital program because we come back to the board whenever we have projects that are ready to go and you would be requested to approve those appropriations whenever Rich or someone in engineering brings that project to you on a monthly basis.
Right.
Sure.
And this is just by virtue of being new. I noticed mention of the amount last year, about $200 left. Why the significant from the project?
Yeah, most of that has to do with our capital program. It's a function of the size of the projects. For instance, one of the things that you'll see when I come in and present, like our monthly or our quarterly financial status report, I always note that in FY24, it appears that we're like $110 million over the amount that we were projected to spend for the capital program. The reason for that is we had a large incinerator project, which you may be aware of at our Bissell and Lemay plant. And we anticipated that we would appropriate those funds in FY24. The project got delayed a few months, so that we budgeted for it in FY24, but it didn't get appropriated until FY25. So there's a disconnect between when we budget it and when we appropriate. So those are the kind of things you may see in terms of differences between like the appropriations that we make and the budgets. But really, the budgets are can change depending on the type of projects that we do. We have some large tunnel projects that will be coming up over the next couple of years. So you'll see an uptick in the budget. After that, you'll see the budget drop because once those tunnel projects are done, we kind of get back to an, if you will, more normal capital project where we're maybe doing sewer work, which is a lot less than what you would see for the cost of a tunnel.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to.
Yeah, it's really driven, our budget is primarily driven by the capital work that we do.
Trustee Kistner, I'll just add on. And the schedule for the capital work is mainly driven by our consent decree. And in our consent decree, we have dates for all those major projects. Do them. So that's also.
Okay, if there are no questions regarding the budget ordinance, I will move on to the tax ordinance. So the district has two primary taxes right now. One that we refer to as the 10-cent tax, and that tax funds the operations and maintenance activities that are relating to our stormwater program. We also have a tax that we refer to it as the 2-cent tax. And those numbers, 10 cent and 2 cent, represents the maximum amount of the tax that we can assess. But the 2-cent tax funds regulatory requirements that we have to comply with to meet stormwater quality requirements outlined by the Missouri Department of Natural Resources. There are 7 OMCI taxes that are levied for operations and maintenance and capital improvements that are in specific parts of the district service area. So those funds are restricted in terms of how they can be used to those particular service areas. So we really have 3 taxes that we levy right now. Of course, with the passage of Prop S, in next fiscal year, you'll see a tax for that new program. So what staff is requesting is that the board approve the introduction of its tax ordinance at its May meeting, and that will set the preliminary tax rates that are reflected in the chart attached to the detail sheet before you. So Stephanie, if you could move to that chart on the next slide. It's a little difficult to see on the screen, but you should have that chart in your packet. So that chart actually reflects that our estimated taxes would be $49.4 million during the fiscal year. The bulk of that comes from our 2-cent and 10-cent taxes. Those two total about $43 million, and the OMCIs comprise about another $7 million. So the way our taxes work, though, is the numbers you have before you and the tax ordinance are estimates based on last year's tax rates. So we received documents from the city and the county assessor's office right up until September. So we'll start getting documents sometime in June that reflect like changes in updated property assessment values. And we use that information to calculate our final tax rates, which we bring to the board in September. We are required to have our tax rates finalized by October the 1st. We have to have those submitted to the assessor's office and to the state auditor's office. That whole process has to be completed by October the 1st. So in September, we schedule a special board meeting for you to approve that final set of tax rates. Are there any questions regarding the taxes that I can answer? Okay, thank you. Okay, and then finally, the last item I have relates to our wastewater ordinance. And so basically, this particular ordinance would approve our new wastewater usage charges based on the Rate Commission's recommendation, which was accepted by the Board of Trustees via resolution. So this action that I'm bringing before you would enact our new wastewater user charge rate schedule. In addition to that, in the ordinance that has been drafted, there are a couple of changes that I want to make sure that I talk to you about. One of the things that we're changing is our typical usage for typical customers dropped from 6 to 5 CCFs. And so if we have somebody that's new to our service area and they have not established a winter quarter average, which is what we use to bill metered customers, and for that matter, we don't have attribute information yet from the city, we bill that customer at that typical rate until such time that we get the information that's needed to establish their winter quarter average, or we get attribute information from the city. So we're going to set that at 5 CCF, so we're reducing it from 6 to 5. Also, one of the things that we have done is we have changed the definition of owner or owners. That's part of the existing wastewater ordinance. And what we've done is we've included persons that act in the capacity of the landlord or serve as the manager of the property as an agent or representative. This change was requested by our collection attorneys, and the reason why is we often have property management companies that are responsible for paying wastewater bills on behalf of the property owner. So this allows us to basically take action against those property management companies that have not paid the wastewater bills. We still would, of course, pursue the owners for the collection, but it also allows our collection attorneys to bring those property management companies in to any kind of action that we may take to collect delinquent charges. Another change that we made relates to the time period for which we can back bill. Right now, that's set at 18 months. We've changed that to read that we would be able to back bill to comply with Missouri statutes. And right now, the Missouri statutes are 5 years is what you can back bill for. We would still keep that per our policies and procedures at 18 months for residential accounts. However, it would be 5 years for commercial accounts. And finally, the main change to the wastewater ordinance involves an appendix which contains our wastewater rates that have been updated for FY25. So are there any questions regarding the wastewater ordinance? Okay.
Marion, could you, on the extra strength super, what's the, so I'm just looking at this number, 726 at 04. What is that unit charge?
It's calculated per milligram/per liter. Is what that represents. But that amount, I think that you're seeing in the ordinance is actually on a per ton basis. There's a calculation that converts that to the tonnage.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any additional questions? Okay, thank you, Trustee. Trustee Evans, that's all that I have.
All right, the next 3 items are mine, so if you keep going. All right, the first thing I've got for you today is an update on the tender and refunding bonds transaction that closed earlier this month. So we've talked about this at the last 2 meetings, but now I've got some final numbers. The transaction actually priced the day of our last committee meetings and closed shortly thereafter. So on the left side of this page, you see a little summary on the 2019 C bonds. So these are taxable bonds issued in 2019 C. There were about 270 million outstanding. We went back to the holders of these bonds and asked them if they'd be interested in selling them back to us at a discount. Given where rates were today versus where they were when these were issued, that opportunity was available. So in the tendered par column, which is toward the middle of the page there, we got about 32.3 million of those bonds, or about 12% tendered. We were hoping for 20%, but we have some bondholders that just didn't want to give up their MSD bonds. We have a lot of insurance companies who tend to be buy and hold investors, so we were hoping for a little bit bigger transaction, but we still got a savings out of this. So we were able to buy back 32.3 million bonds at the discount prices that are listed in the tender price column. So they range from 97 cents on the dollar for the maturity in May of 25, down to about 81 cents on the dollar for the maturities down in the 40s. So average roughly 87 cents on the dollar is what we bought those back at. So we bought at a discount, and then we issued tax-exempt bonds at a premium. That transaction is on the right side of the page. And so we were able to fund this 32 million tender transaction with 25 million par amount new bonds. So we reduced our overall amount of bonds outstanding by $7 million. That's what drove the savings in the transaction. The new bonds are at a higher interest rate, coupon rate than the old bonds. So that ate into the savings, but still about 4.5 million savings overall. So, and that's on the next page. Just a few statistics and a savings summary here again. The par amount of the new bonds, 25 million. Average coupon was 5% because those were at a premium, though the actual true interest cost was about 3.5%. Weighted average maturity of those bonds is about 10 years, which is the same as the bonds that we refunded. So when we refund, not like a lot of people when they refund a mortgage, keep extending the term. We keep the term roughly the same. In this case, it's actually a little bit shorter. On the right-hand side, you can see the overall savings, about 4.5 million less principal and interest payments over the next roughly 20 years. Present value of those savings, less cost of issuance is about 2.5, which is what I estimated at last meeting, what I thought it would be. That's about an 8% net present value savings on the amount of the refunded bonds, which is typically the way we measure those. Our policy allows us to refund as long as that's over 4%. 8% is not bad because rates have been so low. Recently, we've seen, sometimes 10% savings, but 8% is a solid savings, especially given that these taxable bonds were issued at such low interest rates. We are unlikely to have really good opportunities in the future to refund those. They'll become callable in 2019. We'll look at a transaction there again. These new bonds we issued also will be callable in 34. So that will be another opportunity to refund those for savings as well. Any questions on that transaction?
Did your cost of issuance, was that where?
It is.
In line?
Yeah, it's a little, I would say it was in line with what we expected, but because some of those costs are fixed and have minimums, the percentage basis is higher than what we like to normally see. But overall, that is, if the transaction were, if we did get 20%, we would have seen a little bit more cost of issuance, but not a lot, and we would have seen a smaller percentage. So is that what you're asking?
That's right.
Yeah. Next item is a resolution for pension actuarial services. So Milliman has been our actuary. They've won the last 4 or so RFPs. It's actually past time to do an RFP. We had this with Aon a couple of months ago. We were short-staffed last year. I did not get this RFP out, and then they have actually started their actuarial work for this year. So I just want to buy them some time to finish the actuarial work. They also do the retirement calculations for our pension plan participants. So this will let them keep that going for the next 6 months while we do an RFP for that. They've done a good job for us. This cost will be less than $25,000 for 6 months. Any questions about that one? All right, and the last one is the operating fund portfolio. So this is the kind of the investment summary we look at every month. I'll start in the upper left. Our portfolios, about $677 million. That is almost exactly the same as it was at the end of last month. We'll see a big drop in that tomorrow because we've got about $62, $63 million of debt service payments going out. Yield to maturity of our portfolio jumped about 13 basis points as we started to now pay off some of the longer term investments that were put in place when interest rates were lower. So as we see that turnover, we're going to see our yield to maturity go up. It'll be actually in a couple of days, it'll probably be about 3.5. So another big jump after we have investments to mature today and tomorrow to pay the debt service. The benchmark jumped a lot this month, about 30 basis points. Remember, that entire benchmark moves with the market. Only a portion of ours does. That's because interest rates actually went up this month. We've been expecting rates to fall this year. At the beginning of the year, people were expecting maybe as many 6 Fed cuts, which impact the short end of the curve mostly. Instead, there haven't been any, and now people are pricing in maybe only 1 the rest of the year. So we may see higher interest rates the rest of the year, mainly because labor market's strong, consumer spending is strong, and inflation has not. The rate of inflation hasn't dropped as much as it was expected. Earlier in the year, we saw a drop. Now it's kind of holding more steady. Sector allocation in the upper right, that's just how we measure where we are versus the investment policy. We're within our policy limits on all investments, and all those amounts are roughly the same as they were last month. So no big changes. Fund summary in the bottom, the bulk of our money's in operations, which covers most of what we do. Again, that'll drop $60+ million over after tomorrow, after we paid debt service payments. And that'll also then change the maturity distribution, which is in the bottom right. Right now, we've got about 60%, which is higher than usual, of our investments maturing within 1 year. But again, $60 million will come off that tomorrow, so that'll drop pretty significantly, into the 40s or so. The benchmark are the red bars. That's almost all in the 1 to 3 years. So we have a benchmark is not really apples to apples with our portfolio since we spend a lot of construction, debt service payments. So we have a lot more maturing in that 0 to 1 years. There's a typo on the slide. Our 1 to 2 years should be about 25.3, not 23.3 there. So not a significant change though. So. Any questions on the operating fund portfolio? All right, if not, Trustee Evans, that's all we have for the Finance Committee meeting.
So next date is
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Wilson will get things swapped out here and then get going with the stakeholders.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everyone to the, this is really the May Stakeholder Relations Committee meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, the record will reflect that all trustees are present.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to congratulate the Metropolitan Sewer District. Recently, they were awarded the Civic Engagement Award from the Raw Vagabonds Foundation at a luncheon, at our Leadership Awards luncheon a couple of weeks ago. The district was represented and accepted the award by outgoing President Brian Holscher and the Manager of Diversity, Ms. Shauna Paradis. If you haven't seen a program, there are a couple laying around here that we'll leave. Several members of the staff were there, and I thank you for coming. And congratulations again.
Thank you.
Can I get approval of the April committee minute?
Second.
Thank you. First item of business today is a discussion on an ordinance by Sean Stone. How are you this morning?
Good morning. Well, thank you very much. Hope you all are well as well. Yeah, I have one item for today. This is a proposed ordinance that'll be introduced at our next board meeting next month, authorizing the district to enter into a contract with Standpoint Public Affairs for public engagement consulting services and support for 1 year and 3 additional option years. The services and support cover areas include things like advertisement, buying and placement, communications and outreach, consent decree, progress and/or amendments, digital communications, election-related information and education, government affairs, legislative relations, graphic design, our Know Your Zone flood awareness campaign, media relations and public speaking training, and municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4 communications. The purpose of this contract is to continue public engagement surrounding all these efforts and initiatives. Extends our staff. We pay only for the services rendered. We received 2 qualified proposals for this contract and followed our regular process. Standpoint, with a proposal priced at $300,000, was selected based on being the superior comprehensive proposal. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item will be presented by Ms. Paradis. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I'll be delivering our diversity semi-annual report for our fiscal year 2024 that began July 1st, 2023. This report includes the status of completing the disparity study updates, capital program vendor and workforce utilization for construction and design, small contract program utilization, and community benefits program updates. First, I'm happy to report that we are 100% with completion and implementation of the disparity study remedies and recommendations during the first quarter of fiscal year 24 as planned. There were 3 areas of remedies and recommendations. The first 2 are race and gender conscious prime and subcontract remedies, which are tailored to ethnic and gender groups with documented disparities of statistical significance according to our study. The next one is the race and gender neutral recommendations, which are intended to facilitate increasing opportunities to those who want to do business at MSD. And in the next couple of slides, I'll give a high-level detail of how these changes were implemented across our programs. And starting with engineering design professional services, these went into effect for contracts awarded after July 1st at the beginning of the fiscal year. New subcontract goals were applied to professional services based on the study findings, and goals are applicable to contracts that are over $50,000. Updates were also applied for prime multiplier incentive credits for RFQs and RFPs of up to 20% credit during the RFQ RFP process. We also applied workforce goals based on the study findings on projects that exceed $500,000. And when consultants are unable to attain the goals, there are opportunities available to demonstrate good faith efforts, and these steps are now included in our programs. The study also recommends accountability and transparency for the total spend on MSD contracts and recommended that primes now report on all subcontractors performing work on the contract. Next is the construction area. Changes in construction went into effect for contracts advertised and awarded after August 1st, 2023 of this current fiscal year. New subcontract goals were applied to both building construction and non-building construction on projects exceeding $50,000. We also applied workforce goals for both building and non-building construction and updated our apprenticeship goals. When primes, again, are unable to attain goals, we must offer opportunities for them to perform good faith effort in both the pre-award process as well as the post-award process. And again, for accountability and transparency of our program, we now track all spend across contracts. The study also recommended in the construction area that we track trucking and transportation services so that we are more transparent about what services are being applied towards meeting goal participation. Next. Our next slide. Thank you. Next, I'll be covering our construction utilization on our capital improvement replacement program. So here at MSD, we're setting records. This report contains the largest project award MSD has made to date, with the largest amount on record for awards to MBEs and WBEs in a single reporting period. Our program is a true testament that when opportunities are presented in a way for everyone to benefit, it's a win-win for everyone who participates. In my report, 34 of the 36 projects awarded, with the exception of the immediate need and waivers, everyone met the goals. Because our program changes went into effect August 1st of 2023, there will be some overlap of the older program with the new programs, with the new goals, just for a little while until those older programs or older projects are closed out. And we will continue to provide you with all of the details of our programs as we move through this implementation process. However, we had 22 awards under the previous program, and beginning in Q2, we saw 10 projects under the new program requirements as seen on this report. There was one state-funded project award with the Solids Management Design Build project, which contains only the construction amount awarded for that project in this portion of my report. The design amount will be reported separately under the design professional services section on this today's report. So 21.606% of construction project awards totaling $160.7 million went to minority and women participation in the first half of this fiscal year. Of the $115.2 million in payments to prime contractors, 20.31% was awarded to minority and women contractors. Next, I'll cover the construction workforce. During this reporting period, again, we'll have some overlap of goals for workforce as we did in utilization. So I have listed here both, although the overall hours reported are inclusive of all hours worked in construction during the reporting period. In the area of building and non-building, there were 139 active projects working with combined hours of 190,649 hours. And there were 53 active state-funded projects with 116,667 hours. And in this next slide, we'll give you a breakdown of the percentages. The minority hours were 29.57%, and women hours were 8.36%. With the disparity study changes going into effect, we did apply the new workforce goals as a baseline across the program. In applying the total hours to the 37% minority, 11% women, and 46% apprentices, you'll see that the current report were 37%, we're under 37% by almost 23,000 hours, and under the 11% by a little over 8,000. And we've exceeded the 46% apprentice hours by 5,000. Just keeping in mind that our program prior to August 1st was 30% minority, which is less than 0.5% from the 29.57, and 8 and 7% women, which we've exceeded in this report. I'd like to cover the design professional services next. Included in this design portion of this report, the Solace Management Project, as well as our first design contract awards with goals, are applied here in this report. So we had a total of 14 projects awarded during this reporting period, one being the Solace Management Project, along with 13 other design projects with the new goals. Commitments of more than $10 million are represented by the 17.38% in contract awards to MWBE. Of the $14.8 million in payments to prime on design projects that are active, 58% of payments were made to minority and women-owned business. And for workforce, the minority participation is 10.85% and women at 33.98%. Next on the report is our small contractor program. The small contractor program is where minority and women contractors benefit from a sheltered market type programming similar to what is recommended in our disparity study. Nearly 28% of the total overall $2.5 million spend was with MBEs and WBEs who perform work as primes. And as you can see here, they consistently receive 33% of the total number of contracts across the program. We consistently continue to work to cooperate with our community benefits agreement partners listed here in the areas of workforce development, education, internships, and scholarships. And the next slides will cover some of those activities that took place during the reporting period. Our report covers January for workforce development. This report covers January through October of 2023, consisting of cohorts 24 through 30, with MSD sponsoring 55 of the 96 program participants. We also participated in outreach for recruitment, and we even visited an MSD job site, as you can see here pictured. MSD plans to continue its efforts with workforce development through Missouri Works Initiative and BUD STL to area high schools, youth programs, which also includes post-graduation assistance for transportation, tools, and other need-based support, such as mentoring. Last year at this time, we sponsored 3 scholarships for environmental resource training program through SIUE. At our last report, 2 had completed their summer internships, passed the certification examination, and 1 is now employed as a drinking water operator. It's a really good success story. In the current school year, we've also awarded 1 scholarship, and we're currently conducting outreach for the next school term, which begins in August. Finally, we also sponsored 2 high school summer interns, and we're expecting to have more high school interns this summer coming up. And that concludes my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to you, Counselor.
Thank
How are
you.
today?
I'm fine. Thank you, Trustee Wilson. Good morning, trustees. I have 2 topics to cover with you this morning. First of all, staff is asking the board to approve an ordinance authorizing MSD to enter into a new agreement to monitor federal legislative and agency activities that impact MSD. Our existing federal lobbyist contract expires in June of this year. Following an RFP process in which we received 2 qualified good proposals, staff selected the incumbent Cardinal Point Advisors on the basis of their proposal and price. This will be a 1-year contract with up to 4 one-year annual renewal options, and the cost is $75,000 per year. Any questions on that topic? If none, I'll move on to number 2. I'm here to provide you with information about the district's annual insurance renewals. The board is being asked to authorize staff to proceed to bind insurance coverage for the district under various policies. Wanted to mention that with us this morning is Kevin Marquitz, an attorney on my staff in the legal department, and Dan Greco from Thomas McGee Group. Gentlemen, if you could wave. And Dan is with Thomas McGee Group. They are our TPA and our insurance broker. Kevin and Dan have worked very hard to put this insurance program in place, working with HR as they transitioned out of being responsible for our HR program, Tracy Coleman and Dino Kivrich. And Dan and Kevin are available this morning in the event you have any specific questions on the policies or coverage that I can't answer. With that intro, I want to briefly summarize each of the individual policies. Unfortunately, there's 19 of them, so it'll take me a minute, but each is supported by an ordinance, so I need to do that. So bear with me, please. There's a chart that Laura's put up on the board. Of course, nobody can read that. Hopefully, you'll be able to read it in the handout. We did want to provide you with as much information as possible, but sorry for the small print. First, we have a property insurance policy that is through FM Global Insurance. They've been our carrier for a number of years. And this policy protects against perils such as fire, flood, and earthquake loss for property owned by MSD. The policy would pay for physical loss and damage and buildings and contents owned by MSD. The coverage is for $1 billion per occurrence with a $500,000 deductible. Next is a combined liability policy. This is with MOPERM. MOPERM is the Missouri Public Entity Risk Management Group. It's a pool of municipal entities for risk and insurance purposes. The liability policy has 3 separate components or coverages. Those are in the second blue group. Each of these has $2 million in coverage per occurrence, has a $100,000 deductible, and those policies or coverages pay first dollar defense costs from the day one. The 3 coverages are general liability, management and employee benefit plan administration, and employment practices liability. Next, you'll see is our auto coverage. It's through Travelers. Limits are $2 million per accident. This covers damage to MSD autos and liability from MSD employees driving vehicles in an accident. We then have a grouping of public official and excess or umbrella liability. The public official covers things that aren't covered by our MOPERM general liability policy. And then on top of this public official coverage, just like and also on top of our MOPERM general liability policy are 3 layers of excess liability coverage. First layer is through Princeton Excess and Surplus Lines. They provide $5 million in coverage. Second layer, another $5 million. That's with Gemini. Third layer is from HDI Global Specialty, and that provides a final $5 million in coverage. So on top of the 2 we have with MOPERM or with on the public official, we then have 15 in excess. Next is cyber liability coverage. This includes protection from breaches of our employee and customer data, for example, along with other things. Very important coverage for us to have these days. Our cyber coverage is through Travelers and provides us with $5 million in coverage. Next, Owner's Pollution Protective Insurance. This is through AIG Specialty. It covers losses up to $3 million for a pollution condition that is caused by a contractor of the districts. This would apply and protect us as well as the contractor on those small contracts that Shauna mentioned, up to $100,000. We do this, we looked at this a number of years ago and found it was more cost effective to provide this coverage rather than put the burden on the small contractors who would have a more difficult time obtaining the insurance, and it would be expensive and then get passed on in higher bids to us. Next, we're requesting authority for a policy through CNA to cover contractors' equipment, which is a misnomer. It's, despite the name, it actually covers MSD equipment when not located on MSD property. Coverage is for the value of the equipment up to a maximum per piece of $250,000. And this covers a total schedule of $4.3 million in equipment. Next policy is with travelers for commercial crime protection. This protects us against financial loss or dishonest acts of MSD employees. There's $10 million in coverage under the crime policy. We next have 2 fiduciary liability policies. The first is with Federal Insurance and Chubb, protects MSD from financial loss due to mishandling of our employee benefit plans. We've got 10 million there, and then we have a second layer of the same type of coverage through travelers with another 10 million in coverage for a total of 20. Thank you for your patience. We're getting there. Next is our excess workers' comp employers' liability coverage. This is through Midwest Employers Casualty. It's a state law required policy. Coverage is up to the statutory limits on the workers' comp side, another 2 million for employers' liability. Next, the Missouri Petroleum Storage Tank Insurance. This covers cleanup costs caused by leaking storage tanks that release petroleum. Coverage would pay all cleanup costs as well as compensatory damages for physical injury and property. Next is our policy with the National Flood Insurance Program. This provides coverage for loss and damage to our buildings and their contents from flooding. The maximum limits are $500,000 per building and per content. Finally, we have our major facility pollution liability policy. This is through Iron Shore Specialty. It protects MSD from liability claims due to pollution conditions from our treatment plants. And this coverage is for $10 million per occurrence. Trustees, that concludes the information I wanted to present. Does anyone have any questions on the insurance program? If not, thank you very much for your patience. And,
Real quick, Ted.
attention. Yeah.
Max, on the National Flood Insurance Program,
Yes.
our premium's $300,000 annually. Am I reading that right?
I believe so. Yes.
And the maximum policy limit, I guess, is this per claim is 500,000
That's per building.
per building.
So if, for example, we had a number of buildings lost to flood, it would pay 500 per building.
Got it.
Is that right? The experts are nodding, so I think I get that one. Just as a side note, the overall cost of our program went up 500,000. It was 6.5 million last year, as noted at the bottom, and is now at 7 million. Thank you very much, trustees.
Okay. That it, Counselor? That all you have?
I am. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can move on to you, Mr. President, and you can take us to the finish line.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. This is just information only. No action needs to be taken. We will be bringing compensation and classification ordinances to the board meeting for introduction and adoption. These ordinances will cover increases for right now 2 of our bargaining units. We have reached our bargaining unit that covers our bricklayers, heavy equipment operators, our fleet mechanics, and our electricians has been ratified. I've been allowed to let the board know that we have reached tentative agreement with the bargaining unit that covers our collection system maintenance employees, as well as our office staff here, administrative staff here at the Market Street building. They are working to set up a vote so they can ratify their contract. So The third bargaining unit, we're continuing to make progress. Hopefully, we will include them in June as well, so we can adopt their compensation. And we will also bring changes for the unclassified and fee schedule employees at the June board meeting.
Thank you. Our next tentatively scheduled meeting is Tuesday, June the 4th. There are no other, anyone have anything for good of the body? If not, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Gentlemen, ladies, it's been the pleasure of my life. Meeting is adjourned.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we're ready when you are.
Okay, welcome to the 254th meeting of the Program Management Committee. Roll call.
The record will reflect that all trustees are present.
Approval of committee minutes, April 2nd, 2024.
Move approval.
There are no comments by the chair. Engineering Department agenda items.
Good morning, trustees. As I promised, not as light as last month, but we'll get through it and appreciate your patience. If you have questions, be sure and stop me. First item is a CSO volume reduction green infrastructure project at 6317 Clayton Avenue parking lot. This ordinance authorizes the district to enter an agreement with Charlie's Real Estate Investment, provide financial assistance through our green infrastructure grant program. The purpose of this project is to reduce combined sewer overflows to the river to pair for our long-term control plan and consent decree. Project will reduce runoff volume with the installation of one bioretention basin. The total cost of this project is estimated $27,000, and the owner is requesting $17,000 reimbursement for the project. In your packet is an exhibit showing the location. This is in the Dogtown area near Clayton and Tam. They're redoing their parking lot. To the rear, they're putting in bioretention, which will capture stormwater flow off the parking lot before it reaches. The next several items are planned supplemental appropriations for design and construction contract on work that's already ongoing with the district. First one is Abyssal Point wastewater treatment facility fine screens and concrete and gate improvement project. This action will appropriate additional design funds for a design contract with Jacobs Engineering Group. Again, this is a planned appropriation for the fiscal year 24 budget. Authorizes us the additional funding for Jacobs Engineering. The project consists of design and construction phase services to construct new fine screen building at the Bissell Treatment Facility. It also includes demolition and replacement of miscellaneous process gates at the gate building in the pre-aeration base. The appropriation of $100,000 for design services is less than the $250,000 originally planned in the budget due to costs associated with our SRF funding going down for the consultant. Next item is the same project. It's a Bissell wastewater treatment fine screens and concrete improvements. This is a planned appropriation for an ongoing construction project being constructed by Tarleton. The work again consists of the construction of a new building and ancillary support systems. The purpose of the project is to improve preliminary treatment by replacing the aging common eaters and more modern screening equipment. This is a partial supplemental appropriation of $8.5 million, which will bring the current appropriation for the construction to $26,500,000. We do have one more planned appropriation in fiscal year 2025 for approximately $1.5 million that will be coming back again next fiscal. The next item is Black Creek Haddington Court relief. This action appropriates additional funds for ongoing construction project being constructed by Bates Utility. The work consists of construction approximately 8,000 feet of 8 to 42-inch diameter sanitary sewers. Purpose of the project is alleviate overcharged sanitary sewers, and it will provide for the elimination of 3 more of our sanitary sewer overflows. This planned supplemental of $6 million is less than what was originally planned. This was bid right towards the end of last fiscal year, and our bids came in really good. So we had some savings this fiscal year. And total appropriation will be $19 million after this appropriation. The next one is an unplanned appropriation. If you recall, last month we brought emergency repair 074, which is located adjacent to I-55 in the South City near Idaho and Blow. The work consists, there's a 30-inch combined sewer and structure located. There was a large 40-foot sinkhole that opened up in this area near the exit ramp. We're proceeding with the work right now based on our initial appropriation of $600,000. I'm sorry, of $800,000. That was our best estimate at the time. Brian declared this emergency in March, and we got working on it. Since then, we've found some additional requirements of the job. In your packet, there's an exhibit. Primarily, we're asking for an additional $600,000. If you go to the picture in the middle, there's 2 lines to the left that are fiber optics that at the time we were estimating our cost. We didn't feel like we'd be impacted by them, but they are in the trench, so we had to have some special showing for that. So it's kind of hard to tell in the pictures on the sides where that's located. But on the opposite side, you can see a home is impacted by our construction, and we had to put some additional shoring in to protect that home. As you can see, we're right up to the front yard. There was some signs of soil movement in that area. So the additional cost is primarily for special shoring that we've had to put in place. If you look at the top right picture, you can kind of see that large yellow tube there is a shoring that we had to put in place to secure those I-beams. But if you look underneath there, you don't even notice it right off the bat, but there's an excavator underneath there that shows you how far. It's a mini excavator, but how deep that construction really is. So that excavator was lowered down and is working among the shoring, and then there's that fiber optic is that line you see at the bottom of that picture. So we're requesting an additional appropriation of $600,000 for that additional shoring work on this. Any questions?
Yeah, the suspected cause of the failure is a water main break.
Our sewer is directly underneath of that, and the sewer was in distress even prior to the water main break. We had looked at there was a water main break there several years ago. We didn't, it wasn't as expensive. They repaired the water main. Now there's another water main break there. So, I mean, we're probably 20 feet below that. Didn't appear that the water main was caused by ours. We wanted to get the repair done.
But our failure could be because of said water main leak.
It was, like I said, it was 20 feet below that, and that it was damaged by the water. But there was a repair needed at.
Right. Okay.
I'll add one more thing. When water main break does cause us issues, we could go back if we recuperate costs.
From city water. I mean, even if it was a leak over 20 years, it's gonna undermine everything.
I want to assure you that we do.
Okay, that's what I was wondering if at any time, if it's legitimate, instead of us appropriating money, city water pays. But if our sewer leaked, undermined and broke a water, they'll be knocking on our door.
Correct.
Okay. Super.
Is there any more analysis? Other one?
Obviously, our first priority is to get the sewer fixed and get the whole. I would imagine we'll be just having some discussions with them on the sharing some cost on the restoration. Obviously, putting the street back, things like that. But we need to get the sewer fixed and have those conversations. As you can see in the middle picture, we had 4 sewers going right to the center, so those are no longer there. Those have to be.
You're anticipating any sharing of the additional 600,000 related to this additional shoring?
No, we haven't got to those conversations at this time, but I can, once we're all completed, I can discuss.
Would you please?
Where we're at.
Thank you.
Take a note of that. Any other questions on that one? All right, next item is the Lime Pump Station number 3 in Force Main. This appropriates additional funds and authorize staff to amend the design contracts with Jacobs Engineering Group. This is a planned appropriation for fiscal year 2024. Lime Pump Station number 3 in Force Main is a lump sum cost project for the design and replacement of the existing Lime 3 pump station, Force Main, in Ameren, Missouri customer substation, and the demolition of the existing Lime pump station, the elimination of the Martigny pump station, and the elimination of the Jefferson Barracks pump station. Those 2 pump stations are being eliminated with the construction of the Jefferson Barracks tunnel. The purpose of this project is to pump flows being received to the existing Lime 3 and from the new Jefferson Barracks tunnel up to the Lime wastewater. This project's being designed as the overall watershed contract that we have with Jacobs Engineering. Our appropriation of $740,000, which is for post-design services equal to what we have in the budget for this project. Next item is the Lower Merrimack Wastewater Treatment Plant Phase 2. This is for construction management services for KEI Construction Services. This appropriates additional funds to that construction management contract and amends that construction contract with KEI 360. The construction management to be provided consists of the biddability and constructability of the review and management during the construction of the project. This funding is for a total of $1.9 million appropriation. That's equal to what we had budgeted for the fiscal year. The next 6 items are projects that we've bid over the last month or so. If you have questions, please stop me. The first project is the Cox Creek Force Main Rehabilitation. Appropriates funds and authorize staff to enter a construction contract. The work consists of the construction of approximately 2,000 feet 36-inch diameter sanitary force main. The purpose of this project is to replace the existing aging force main. The district received 5 bids for this project. The low bid was from Keeley Construction. The bid was below our design estimate, but our appropriation of $2.66 million is above the budget. The original scope was to try to rehabilitate a portion located near a levee, but once we got in and looked at the condition of the force main, the project design changed to replacement, and we moved it from under the levee, replaced it. So our bids came in a little higher than what originally budgeted for the project.
Rich, is this on our property?
That picture doesn't turn out.
That's
It's actually near the water. It's near
American Water.
American Water
okay.
plant. So that's why you see those 3 clarifiers. I apologize. That picture didn't turn out
That's
very
okay.
well. No, it's near they call it the Hog Hollow facility. We had other projects where we replaced it. This was actually what we felt like was a newer portion. That's why we were going to rehabilitate
All
the
right.
condition required.
So the original plan was to rehabilitate, now we're going to replace.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
Next item is the Harlem City Shed Mitigation Basin Sewer Separation, or Separation Sewers. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of approximately 10,000 linear feet of 12 to 60-inch storm sewer. The purpose of the project is to relieve basement backups and alleviate wet weather surcharging and overlying flooding of the combined sewer system in the Harlem watershed. The district received 5 bids. The low bid was received from Gershenson Construction. The bid was lower design estimate, and our appropriation of $4 million in fiscal year 25 and $1.7 million in fiscal year 25 is below our original budget for the project. Gershenson has committed to 20% minority and women participation, which meets our current goals of 10% minority and 10% women. And I apologize, I left that part out. The previous job, Healy Construction, they also met the goal of 10% minority. That project. Next item is the Lime Pump Station number 3 and Force Main project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of replacement of the existing Lime 3 pump station and force main, construction of an Ameren customer substation, and approximately 2,700 linear feet of consolidation sewer to bring sewers to this facility. Includes the abandonment and demolition at 6 separate sites, including the Martigny and Jefferson Barracks pump station. The district received 2 bids for this work. The low bid was from Goodwin Brothers Construction. The bid was above our design estimate, and the multi-year appropriation of $83.8 million, with $35 million being in this initial appropriation, is above the original budget for the project. This was a building construction project which had larger minority and women goals. The minority goal was 21%, and the women goal was 10%. Goodwin Brothers committed to meeting those goals for a total of 35.7. I will note that the estimate, the bid and the was above both our estimate and the original budget for the project. Our original budget was listed at $75 million. Our estimate was $76 million. The bids came in around $81 million, and with contingencies, our appropriation is $83 million. That is above our estimate, but we had our engineer review the bids received from both bidders. And we feel like due to market conditions, particularly on equipment, 3-year project, some of that where they've had to take a look and estimate what those costs might be. We're working at multiple sites, which our original estimate didn't take into consideration. Again, the volatility, but we feel like we're recommending proceeding with the. Next item is the North Clay Sanitary Relocation Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 450 feet of sanitary sewers, 8 inches in diameter. The purpose of this project is to abandon and reroute a deteriorated and undersized sanitary sewer currently located below the residence of 4 homes. The district received 5 bids on this project. Low bid was from Pavement Solutions. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $425,000 is below the original budget for the project. Pavement Solutions is providing 20.9% or 20.01% participation, which meets our 10% minority and 10%. Next item is the St. Matthias Sanitary Relief Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of construction of approximately 1,300 feet of 24-inch diameter sanitary. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and relieve the overcharged sanitary sewer. The district received 3 bids on this project. The low bid was from Keeley Construction. The bid was just above our design estimate, and our appropriation of $1.55 million is just above the budget for the project. We estimate the reason for it being above budget, the sewer, due to avoid a number of utilities, the sewer was moved into the street, which is requiring additional street replacement that we did not anticipate. Keeley's committed to 20.05 minority and women participation, which meets our 10 and 10 goals for minority and women. Next item is the Upper Fishpot East Sanitary Relief Project. This action appropriates funds and authorizes staff to enter a construction contract. The work to be done consists of the construction of approximately 3,400 feet pipe sewers 8 to 15 inch in diameter. The purpose of this project is to reduce building backups and overcharged sanitary sewers. The district received 6 bids on this project. The low bid was from Kelp Contracting. The bid was below our design estimate, and our appropriation of $2.8 million is slightly above the original budget. There was a slight increase in scope, another additional reaches removed, and we had some additional restoration, easement. Kelp is committed to 20.17% minority and women participation on the project, which meets our 10% minority and 10%. All right, the next 4 items are OMCI reimbursement grants to municipalities. That's the next 4 items for stormwater work being completed by these municipalities. First one's out of the Deer Creek OMCI for reimbursement to the city of Glendale. The ordinance authorized us to enter into an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Glendale for eligible stormwater expenditures for revenues collected by the Deer Creek OMCI. Eligible stormwater expenditures include the following: storm sewer, inlet construction, drainage improvements, stream bank stabilization, erosion control, clearing under bridges, and cleaning of detention basins, stormwater planning or engineering costs or construction management costs, and other stormwater related expenses deemed appropriate by the district. The city of Glendale is actually doing improvements to their stormwater ordinance and doing a stormwater plan update and addressing stormwater infill. So they're contracting those services to develop those ordinances with the consultant. The estimated price is approximately $92,575, and they're requesting reimbursement. Next item is also in the Deer Creek. It's for the city of Richmond Heights. Again, to authorize the district to enter into an intergovernmental agreement for eligible stormwater expenditures. The city of Richmond Heights is constructing a project called Banneker and Hicks Avenue Storm Sewer Project. The city requesting funds for construction services. They're adding some additional sewers that outfall into a subdivision, and then they're building additional sewers within the subdivision streets. The estimated cost of the construction is $491,633. The district, out of the OMCI funds, will be reimbursing them $457,477, which is their share of the grant. The next two items are both agreements with the city of Olivet for the same project. They've asked us to split these up. One is for construction management services, the other is actual construction. This ordinance again authorizes us to enter in those two intergovernmental agreements with the city of Olivet. The project is the University City Llewellyn to Price Channel Improvement Project. The first request is for reimbursement of $43,455. The city's contracting for the construction management services during the construction of this project located at the southwest branch of River Depict. The second agreement, again, the same project, Llewellyn to Price Channel Improvements. They're doing the construction on this project. The estimated cost of the construction work is $222,952, and the city's requesting reimbursement at a full amount, $220,950. Right, only a couple more items to go. Next item is a request, Hawthorne Estates Sanitary Relief Project. It authorizes the district to proceed to further condemnation efforts, including the filing of all necessary court pleadings and documents leading to the acquisition of permanent easements on two parcels of ground located in De Pere and Town and Country. The project consists of construction of approximately 1,800 feet of 12-inch diameter sanitary sewer. The purpose of this project is to provide relief of overcharged sanitary sewers in the area. So far, we've been unable to negotiate easements with two property owners. There were a total of 8 easements initially. We've gotten 6 of those, and it's down to 2. In your packet, there's an exhibit showing the location. It actually is 2 homes right next to each other that we're still negotiating with. Parcel 5 is actually represented by an attorney. As you can see, we're heading through their front yard and then going to the rear yard of parcel 6. Parcel 5, they're asking us to do improvements. There's a creek. It's hard to see as there's a lot of trees to the rear of the property. It's not really impacted by our construction. We've told them it's not something that we're going to entertain, so we're still negotiating with them. Parcel 6, right now we're just assessing the value of certain trees that are going to be removed by the project. We feel like we'll be able to. We're asking to proceed to condemnation so we can keep the project moving forward. Excuse me. All right, and the last item is the Cox Creek Pump Station B relocation project. We're asking to appropriate funds related to the purchase of properties and demolition related activities for us to acquire property for the new pump station. Will allow the area necessary to accommodate the construction of the replacement sanitary pump station. The effort will include the acquisition property through negotiation or condemnation if necessary, and securing the site. We'll utilize our property acquisition consultant to perform all the negotiations and manage the acquisition. This is simply appropriating those dollars, so we have those dollars available to go ahead and negotiate. Right now, we're looking at 2 parcels of ground. This pump station is located in Chesterfield Valley, so trying to find a good spot, relocate a pump station into valleys, proven to be sort of difficult. We're appropriating $2 million. Once we have decided on a property and negotiate, I will bring that back to the board. We'll in closed session.
So Rich, again, this is to acquire property that we haven't yet
Correct.
identified.
The location where the current pump station is not large enough for the new facility. We're upsizing the pump station, increasing the storage area. And also difficult to build a new pump station in where you got an old one that has to stay operational.
Right.
So we're actually relocating it to another site. I think 2 sites, one's sort of adjacent, the other's across the street. To bring those flows to that site, put in the new pump station.
And so so this ordinance is going to authorize us to authorize you.
It
potentially
makes the
spend-
it makes the funding available to us
Gotcha.
for negotiation. And then we will bring the individual discussion on the sale of the property and our appraisals and everything to you in a close.
Gotcha. Okay. Is this traditionally how?
On larger project, in fact, in next fiscal year, we have the second of our 2 CSO tunnels. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll appropriate the funds for property acquisition where we're going to have shafts or facilities on. That allows us to have the money available. I call them for opportunity on the tunnel project. It's for opportunity where property may come up for sale. We're talking about projects that are 10 years out. This one here is an active project. We had hoped to come with this appropriation earlier the fiscal year, but we want to get the funds secured this fiscal. Includes the agenda. We do have one closed session.
Thank you, Rich. Like a motion to go into closed session to discuss legal, confidential, or privileged matters under section 610.021, subparagraph 1, RSMO.
So move.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Wabi?
Here.
Trustee Kistner?
Here.
Trustee Evans?
Can I get a motion to come out of closed session?
So move.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
We're back in open session.
Okay, there's no other business. Next tentative meeting date is June 4th, 2024. Motion for adjournment, please.
Oh, move.
Second.
We're out of here.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
will not be June